Our house sat alone on a rise of land just outside a small railroad town. That kind of place that felt stuck in time, like it was out of a Steinbeck novel. You could step onto the porch at night and hear nothing but wind moving through the grass and the low distant hum of the freight cars rolling from miles away. The property sloped gently down on all sides, flattening into wide fields and thin strips of woodland that seemed to stretch on and on forever. There were no close neighbors, no streetlights, no nearby traffic. At night, the dark pooled around our property as if it had somewhere else to go. Inside, things were ordinary, quiet, comfortable. This wasn't a place that we were afraid of during the day. It was super normal. It may have been very isolated, but that didn't give us any reason to be scared of anything out there. And that was true for most of my childhood. This wasn't the first house that I can remember, but it's the one that we spent the most time in. My parents had bought it when my brother and I were still in elementary school, the property that they always dreamed of, and it was closer to the big job opportunity that my dad had. They made the purchase and we got moved in. Dad immediately started going to work. My brother and I were quick to explore when we weren't at school, and my mom made the place very beautiful. They bought the house from a man that lived alone. I don't remember specifically a lot about that guy, but I remember meeting him once or twice. He seemed nice, normal-looking guy, thin hair, thin frame, polo shirt and slacks. He said he was cashing in on the real estate market and also moving for some kind of job opportunity himself. He spent some time showing them upgrades he'd made to the house while they went through the motions of the deal, and this was mostly a private sell. And then one day, the house was ours, and I never saw that previous owner again. He was packed up and moved on, living his new life. I vaguely remember him not having a lot of stuff, or maybe he'd already moved most of it. Things were incredibly normal the entire time during the deal and after. No scary animals in the yard, no ghost inside the house. Our new lives began to unfurl. Every so often, my mother would mention something strange that she'd heard after we all were in bed, though. She described it as this dull metallic knocking, slow, rhythmic, and hollow. Not loud or frantic or anything, just this steady, irregular sound that seemed to come from somewhere beneath the bedroom, beneath the house itself. She said she heard it most in the morning, just after Dad left for work, and when we were still sleeping before school. She said she could also hear it around midday, sometimes when she was home alone. She, like anyone else, would assume it was the plumbing, maybe an old pipe shifting, perhaps the furnace cycling on and off. Houses make noises, you know, especially at odd hours. They settle, breathe, adjust to the weather outside. They expand and contract with the temperature changing. It's wood and metal groaning, nothing more. But this didn't sound anything like that. It wasn't a bang or a knocking pipe. It wasn't a creak or a groan. This was the unmistakable sound of metal striking metal, and it was well below the house. It wasn't something she heard beneath the flooring when she was laying in bed, head pressed to the pillow. It sounded like it was escaping from the center of the earth. Again and again, she told herself it was nothing, told herself it had to be something mechanical, perhaps even an echo from the distant train tracks, reverbing through an underground chasm. Eventually, after enough nights of listening to it, she taught herself to just ignore it. For that entire first year, she was the only one who ever mentioned hearing anything of the sort. My brother and I were hard sleepers, the way young kids do. Our rooms were on the opposite side of the house, and whatever lived below my parents' room never seemed to wander too far. If it made noise anywhere else, we would have noticed. The nights passed, the seasons changed, the knocking faded into a story that she would only occasionally bring up, half joking and half unsettled. Until the night that I actually ended up hearing it myself. I was older then, old enough to stay up late on my own and keep my own curiosities. The house was dead silent, no television, no taps on, no other machines running, not even a touch of wind beyond the exterior of the house. It was unmistakable inside that kind of vacuum. It was faint at first, so faint that I would almost dismiss it any other time. A dull, distant talk. I held my breath, reminded immediately of every story, every other sound my mother had described. This was exactly what she'd been talking about. A second knock would follow, slightly louder, hollow yet flat at the same time, and it continued on. The sound came from beneath the floor, not from the basement, not from the crawl space. It felt deeper than that, as though it were coming from the very crust of the earth. I lay there frozen, pulse thudding in my ears, waiting for a mole man to explode through the floor of my bedroom. Another knock came, then another, each spaced far enough apart that I found myself counting the seconds between them. 10, 12, 15. It reminded me of some kind of pipe work, like there was a plumber working on something well below the foundation of the house. I got out of bed and padded down the hall to my mother's room. I didn't knock, just pushed the door open and stood there in the dark until they began to stir. "I hear it," I whispered, and both my parents sat up slowly listening themselves. And so we all lay there together for nearly an hour, nobody speaking, just counting those soft, patient taps rising up from beneath the house. There were other sounds too, and my mom casually explained each one. a line of identical taps. She would nod. I used to hear that one a lot. Bang, bang, bang. Slow and metered out. She would nod again. That's the most common one I hear. A different sound, like something being stretched or open, but still the sound of metal. She described it as tearing. She said she heard that one the least often, almost never over the last couple of years. After that night, we didn't joke about it anymore. Dad was ready to call the cops, but he didn't know what to tell them. We also began to notice other things over the next couple of months. We did in fact think the house was haunted. Footsteps sometimes, slow creepy pacing that echoed faintly up through the floorboards, far away and distant, never close enough to pinpoint or to follow. A soft slide of something shifting against the wood, like something being rolled up. A dry cough that didn't belong to anybody inside the house. Sometimes even a sneeze, sharp and sudden, clean cut through the stillness of the night. Each time, whoever heard it assumed it was somebody else. My brother would think it was me. I thought it was my parents. My parents would assume it was one of us. It wasn't until we began hearing things while completely alone that pieces started to rearrange themselves. I distinctly remember being home alone, no question about it, when I heard that same metal clanging, followed by a pause, then a grunt, then more clanging. My parents were gone. My brother was out riding his bike, and yet it sounded like there was somebody hard at work just beneath my feet. One afternoon, my mother was home by herself, holding the laundry in the living room. The house was quiet, the air was heavy with heat, and she bent down to gather up and pile some clothes. She heard footsteps cross the office floor above her, slow and careful steps, navigating the interior of the home. She called my name. She got no answer. She called my brother's name. Still nothing. She stood there listening as the footsteps moved down the hallway, paused, and then faded away. That evening when she told us about it, everybody was dead quiet. We'd been waiting for something like this to happen. My brother and I had both been at school. My father was at work. And she knew that, but wanted us all to be aware that there may in fact be somebody coming in and out of our house. Dad wanted to call the police again. My mother actually agreed, and she said that she in fact would have had she actually seen a person in the house at the time. Until they actually had evidence of some kind, calling the cops would just make them look crazy. That was the first time we admitted out loud that there was something truly bizarre happening inside our home. No more delusions about train echoes through the underground cave networks. There was something going on that had some form of an explanation, something that was more than likely human. Once that idea took root, the house seemed to go dormant, as though whatever lived beneath us finally realized that it was in fact being heard. By that afternoon, we were banging pots and pans all over the vents, playing loud music, yelling at the top of our lungs that whoever was making noise had to stop. Otherwise, this would be the new normal. We decided to fight fire with fire. The changes came slowly and they were not to our liking. A cabinet door was left open when nobody remembered using it. Shoes shifted from the mudroom to the hallway. A dining chair pulled back at an odd angle, as if somebody had stood up quietly and then forgot to push it in. The fucked up part, it was honestly most likely us. We were suddenly hypercritical of our own lifestyle and behavior, and any little stray observation must have been the phantom that was haunting us, right? It wasn't dramatic, none of it was enough to cause alarm on its own, but it happened often enough that we began to second guess ourselves. We stopped asking what happened and would begin asking who did it. At night, the sounds would return with new variety. The knocking still came from below, but it was no longer followed in any kind of pattern. Sometimes it came in clusters, 2 or 3 dull taps in quick succession. Other times it sounded like something striking the underside of the house, then sliding away, metal scraping with every movement. Footsteps would follow, traveling distances that didn't quite line up with the layout of the house. Lying awake in the dark, I began to recognize the difference between ordinary house noises and the other stuff. It was actually very easy to differentiate. Once, I never told my parents this. I heard a voice, talking, words faintly trickling out from somewhere. It stopped and then I never heard it again. After that, sleep would become very inconsistent for me. I remember thinking our house was poised over this portal to hell, and I thought I was hearing the devil himself. We began comparing notes every single day. My mother asked if anybody had been awake late. My brother asked if somebody had come home early. I asked questions I already knew the answers to. My father dismissed it all. We needed somebody to really investigate. He worked long hours and slept deeply. Whatever was happening affected him the least. And this only made the house feel divided. Just before sunrise one morning, I awoke to the sound of movement outside my window. Not the wind, not an animal, but that same metered steps that I'd heard before from under the house. Fog lay thick across the field, low and unmoving. At the edge of the tree line, where the land dipped into shadow, I saw a man standing still facing the house. He was tall and narrow, his posture slouched, as if tired or injured. I couldn't see his face, only the outline of him against the gray morning light. I stayed perfectly still, gripped by that sudden certainty that if I moved, he would notice me through that window. After a long moment, he turned and walked into the woods, disappearing smoothly. And of course, I thought maybe I was seeing things. It was early, foggy, shadowy. It was possible I was seeing some kind of trick of the light. By the time I woke my mother and pulled her to the window, the fog had thinned and the tree line now stood empty. She didn't tell me I imagined it. She looked spooked herself, ready to load us up and leave the property if needed. Later that day, my brother would admit that he'd seen somebody on the property as well, early in the morning. He hadn't said anything at the time and assumed it was a hunter or somebody just cutting through our land. After that, we did not feel as isolated. My dad actually did make a call to the police. They looked around the edge of the property and didn't find much, even poked around the footings of the house. They said they'd come back if we called, but for now, there was nothing that told them there was a person bothering us or loitering, trespassing, whatever. The sounds inside the house did not stop, but they were different. The knocking came from new places, the footsteps crossed beneath rooms they never had before. One night, my mother heard a sneeze directly below her bed, wet and restrained, like somebody doing everything they could to stay quiet. Of course, we checked the next morning. The basement, the crawl space, exterior vents, the yard, nothing disturbed. No footprints, no signs of entry. Dad had the cops come out once again, and they went through the same motions and found nada, zip. Now, all of that should have been comforting, but it just deepened the rabbit hole. Around the same time, helicopters began passing overhead, not often and not directly above the house, but always low, always following the same pattern across the open back base of our hill. Occasionally, a military plane would follow, close enough to rattle the windows. It wasn't as low, but it made that similar loop. Each time they passed, the house went totally mute. No knocking, no footsteps, or any kind of movement. It seemed like whatever was living beneath us picked up on the presence of the aircraft, and it was super weird and started to make my head spin. How big was this? How deep was this? But one day we made a breakthrough, and it didn't happen all at once. My brother mentioned it over lunch. He was quiet for a moment, pushing food around his plate, then said something that made all of us stop what we were doing. "There are doors in the woods," he said. "Behind the house, buried." My mother asked him what he meant by that. He told us last year, him and his friend had wandered into the trees behind our property. They found a shallow depression in the land, something that didn't look natural once you noticed it. At the bottom, half hidden by brush and dirt, were two metal doors set into the ground, flat, heavy, and sealed shut. They didn't open them. They didn't even try. Something about them had felt dangerous to them. They obviously weren't meant to be found. He went on saying that they continued to look around the area and found a second door further along the hill. This one had a single hatch door that was round and sunk into the earth itself. At the time, he assumed they were some kind of storm shelter, old utility access, something totally routine, you know? He hadn't really thought about them again until the knocking started to really haunt us, and then the chopper patrols came in almost that exact same area. It then occurred to him that it could be a military installation out there or something. That afternoon, we ended up pulling up some satellite images, zoomed out and zoomed in, and got our own orientation. Just a few adjustments and boom, there they were. Two rectangular shapes just beyond the tree line, partially obscured by foliage, symmetrical, unmistakably man-made, positioned not far from where the man had been standing that morning, facing our house. And the round one was a little harder to find, but it appeared to be there as well. There was no roads that led to them, no structures nearby, nothing that explained why they were there or what connected them to us. But from Mom's best guess, they were maybe 1,200 feet away from where we stood now. The house now felt like a ticking time bomb. Mom was furious that my brother hadn't said anything sooner, and the knocking did not stop. It actually began to sound closer, as if whatever had stayed deep beneath us had begun to move upward, testing the space. Sometimes the taps would come directly beneath the center of the house. Other times they followed the slope of the land like something traveling underground. The nights when helicopters passed overhead, the knocking would go away. The nights when the skies were clear, it would return, soft and firm, like somebody checking a piece of fruit. My mother actually started keeping notes, times, dates, sounds, and patterns, and my father refused to look at them, to acknowledge it all. He told us our imagination was getting away from us, said there were reasonable explanations for everything, old infrastructure, geological noises, coincidences. Every now and again, he would hear something and I could see that flicker of doubt in his eyes. He was also the one that insisted on dragging the police out here not once but twice. He knew what he heard, it's just that the police didn't search to uncover anything. And for a simple man like my father, that was enough. That was all the answers that he needed. But even he began locking the doors, all hours of the day. And we never went to the doors inside the woods. It honestly felt like crossing a line that we couldn't uncross. It felt unholy. Perhaps if we were out there, they'd be open and something would drag us underneath the surface, show us exactly how it made all those noises. And the presence continued to linger. Sometimes late at night, I just lie there awake and listen, not to the house, but to the land beneath it. I began to imagine the space under us not as empty earth, but as something hollowed out. Long corridors, reinforced walls, maybe even a city. Dwarves tinkering around, mining iron and tin from the rich veins, and forged empires inside the darkness. I had a lot of wild dreams like this for all of my middle school years. And once, just before falling asleep, I too heard the cough directly below my room. There was no muffle or distance with it. Right there beneath me, inches. I didn't move, I could hardly breathe. No more coughing or sounds after, and I felt completely crazy. As the years passed, the disturbances would fade, slowly. The helicopter stopped coming almost completely. The knocking softened and became true background noise. We only heard it every now and again, and Dad thinks it was just rocks shifting under the house. And to my brother and I, though, this place has never felt the same. The doors are still out there in the woods. We've checked. They haven't moved. They haven't rusted. They appear maintained. No overgrowth, no layers of dirt or dust along the seams. Whatever is beneath our house apparently comes and goes, or at least receives company of some kind. Whatever the case, though, it's become a lot more quiet now. Some nights when I can't sleep, I wonder if it was a Morse code of some kind, maybe just to scare us, or to warn us, or maybe someone was asking for help down there. Who knows?